Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Saturday Morning Coffee, the Saturday Morning Gamers official podcast. We've joked a lot recently about Jesse not being in the podcast as the host anymore, and now he actually isn't here, so I will be taking over as the host today. I am Jordan, or JKU390 from TrueFriendsGaming. Sorry about that. Have with us today Scott from ScottDogGaming. Go ahead, Scott.
Hello.
And for the first time in a while, we have Oystobix.
Hello.
You've been away
It's been
at
a
uni,
while.
Oyst. Yeah.
It's been a while. He's forgotten how
Yes.
to talk.
Yeah. I'm just nervously laughing now all the time.
Oh, okay.
There's no need to be nervous. We'll take an extra special care.
Well, he
with
looks
you.
nervous, but on the surface, he's calm and. Well, okay, so we have one primary topic to talk about this time. I don't know if we're going to have any of the regular features and stuff because, again, Jesse's not here, and we didn't really have this planned. This was something we're just kind of doing impromptu because Jesse, again, didn't show up. So Dungeons and Dragons is a thing we've been talking about a lot lately. We've been doing the game Stars Without Number, which you can usually see us play every Monday on the Twitch and YouTube at, was it 7 p.m.?
7 p.m. GMT. Yeah. Have you been enjoying that series, Oyst?
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
Definitely kept up to date with it.
So
Who's your favourite character?
Oh, yeah, I was waiting for that. I was waiting for that question. I haven't kept up with it. I'm really sorry. As I said, university has just really dominated my life. So I have no idea what I'm getting myself into.
That's right. You've only got 30 hours of footage to catch up on. So
Yeah.
30
start when we're done. And
what's your degree in?
Biology.
Fair enough. I was hoping you'd say something cool, but I'll take it.
What biology is cool? That's like the coolest subject to study. It's better studying than finances or economics, without a doubt. Economics is too confusing. Well, for me it is anyway.
The Oyst quote of the day. All right, Scott, do you want to start us off with the Dungeons and Dragons type stuff?
well, yeah, I guess so. We as you said, we've been playing Stars Without Number, and there's been this sort of growing murmurings within the group about why we should be doing D&D, and I think everybody has agreed on that fact. So I thought it'd be good because we've had some ideas about what we want to do around about the D&D stuff, which is we'll come to in a bit. But I thought it'd be good to have just like a session on D&D because some people will know what it is, some people won't have any idea what it is, some people will have played it, some people won't have played it, and I thought it'd be good to touch on some of those sort of stereotypes and the view from the outside, I guess. So I guess if we just go through the group and talk about our experience, I'll start. I've literally played Star Without Number is my whole experience of a D&D type game. You laughing at me?
Yes.
Wow. But I have watched a fair amount, thinking this is something I really want to try, but just never had the chance really. So.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of friends that were always into it, and they'd like describe their things, like adventures and things that went on, which I always thought, it's kind of cool. I got the 3.5 books, like back in 2004, I think is whenever I got those. And I looked at a lot of that stuff, and I kind of made campaigns, but not to the point where I'd play them or have anybody play them because it just felt strange to me at the time. But then all of my experience with it has strictly been in DMing. I've never actually played any of the games. I DM Stars, I DM D&D, and I guess soon I might be doing it again. And Oyst, how about you, buddy? Let's hear about your experiences.
I have zero experience. Total rookie over here.
Which is actually, I think, a really good thing because Scott was talking about seeing people from the outside, their viewpoints. So, in your mind, what is it like to play D&D? If you had to describe it to somebody.
Well, how can I describe it if I haven't?
Well,
played
so
it?
imagine you're going to play it for the first time. Go ahead and tell me what you think your experience is going to be like.
Okay. If I imagine I was going to play it, I don't know. I think I'd be nervous, definitely, because I don't know what to expect out of this. Probably excited as well, but I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. I have no idea what is going to happen.
It's quite interesting because we were just talking about how the popularity of it is obviously growing hugely, but over in the UK, it's not something that we see mainstream very often.
Yeah, we're here in the US. I've seen it, even stuff like shows like Dexter's Laboratory. They played, what was it, Monsters and Mazes. That was it.
Yeah. The only thing I can remember ever seeing it on was the IT crowd. And the sketch in the IT crowd is that one of the people is getting one of the IT sort of nerds to pretend that they're their husband. And then he starts talking to all of her friends and telling them about this D&D session. And they all turn up not having any idea what it's about. And then when he starts explaining it, they're all really angry and annoyed that it sounds so stupid. And then by the end of it, they're all like role playing and all into it, and are all sort of waiting for the next meeting. And I think that's the only thing I can ever really remember seeing. Yeah.
The weird thing about the game is it's one of those games that you don't trying to explain to somebody. Like even when people would tell it to me, like I said, it was kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. Nothing exciting. But once you actually play it, it's pretty fantastic.
So Oyst asked me what D&D was, and my explanation was the DM tells you a scenario or a story. You tell the DM what you want to do with your character, and then you roll some dice to decide the outcome, which is like the lamest explanation, but at the same time is the explanation.
Oyst, are you familiar with what DM is?
Is that Dungeon Master?
Correct.
Listen to him.
So there's the additional player who, depending on the game, will be Dungeon Master or Game Master, who their whole job is to basically be every non-playable character, every NPC, and create the world that your character is in. Beyond that, your character does whatever you want your character to do. But you're basically what you're doing is sitting around a table playing pretend in your mind. Obviously, whenever you see it on TV, it's usually people being like, oh, I go out and do that. And you don't have to do that. You can be like, my character goes and poops in the woods. It doesn't matter. However you want to do it.
Okay. Did anyone hear it?
The trees. Yeah, so you can literally do crap like that. But it's just a free reign thing. And then if there's certain things, then the DM has to be like, okay, you have to roll to find out how well you do with that. So be like, I try and...
So I get to make up my own character, basically. And then I have to decide... well, do I get given... Firstly, do I get given like certain quests or
it
tasks? It
depends on where you go. Think of it like, have you played Skyrim before?
I've played Skyrim, yeah.
Or Oblivion, or... Okay. So... imagine the entire world of Skyrim, but rather than see it, you just have somebody talking it like through to you like a radio.
Okay.
So you could be like, I walk in, can I go to that city? Be like, yeah, sure. And be like, where do you want to go? And you'd be like, okay, I want to go to like the Reeve, the guy in charge. I want to go to their house and see what's going on. You're like, cool. You go in there, they'll, there's something suspicious going on. They seem a little strange. So you ask them what's the matter, and they explain it to you. Then, you might have a quest. So they'll be like, oh yeah, there's some goblins that have been attacking lately, and we need a way to get. So then you'd be like, cool, I'm going to go after them. Then you'd be like, I see a goblin. I want to shoot him. So you're like, cool, roll a dice and I'll tell you if you hit him.
You know what? It's interesting because there's in terms of entertainment, there's nothing quite like it. When you buy a computer game, you go home, you play that computer game. It's full of set pieces, mission stories that you have to do in order to progress in the game.
You're absolutely correct.
When you watch a film, it's a plot. It's from start to finish, what's going to happen normally before it happens. Whereas with this, the GM could say, there's some orcs raiding a village nearby, and you could say, not really interested in that. Let's go over here. And you can make your own, and it's just sort of that improv. I like it because I get to mess around a lot.
Yeah,
it's just something completely different to anything else that I've sort of played over the years with computer games and all the rest of those things, because there's a limit to what you're allowed to do and what you can do. Whereas in this sort of scenario, you can pretty much try anything, and it might work, it might not work.
I'm generally not one to give them no's when they ask if they can try something, to the point where on the Dramarian Tales, which is the D&D series on my channel, people like Alex have, they walked in with Starbucks coffee. Like their character just had it. For whatever reason, we're like in some weird mystical fantasy place, and he's like, I invent Starbucks and make coffee. Like, cool, go for it.
Yeah, one of the examples, I guess, is we were talking and we were playing Stars Without Number, and we went to a planet where they had problems with pirates.
Like literal pirates, not space pirates, just pirates.
And
Okay.
we were talking about a price to clear out these pirates, and I suggested to the man who I was making the deal with that if we decapitate the pirates and bring their heads back, would we get more money? And the answer to that was yes. So one of our party, just every time there was a dead pirate, just whopped off their head. Sort of things like that just sort of build into the story. And then, of course, the next time we tried to make a deal, even though it was something completely separate, like save school kids from a burning building, it's like, if we bring back their heads, could we? It's storytelling with an element of randomness, and then the dynamics of a group, which could mean that anything happens. That's what I like about it. It's
play pretend, but you got a dice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds like, as a student, it sounds like very much like a drinking game that I would play.
Possibly, yeah. I think in the UK, if it had been more popular and more mainstream, you probably would have played it I'm sure at your uni there would have been groups of people who did play it or who are playing it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it is, and the popularity is growing and growing, I think, over here. But and you can see that with the amount of streams, the amount of money that gets donated in live streams to people who are playing those games.
Yeah, we had a bunch of people that did like pen and paper type RPGs back where I went to university. In fact, where I went to university, there was a whole club for it, and there were like 200 plus people in it that would just go and all sit around at different tables, making different scenarios, settings, and stuff, and just played tabletop games.
See, one of the interesting things is I tried to convince some of my friends to do it. I was going to suggest I'd DM, and they would come round once a week, once a month, whatever it would be, and we'd play it, have pizza and beer, and they were interested in the pizza and beer.
Yeah.
But there's two chains of thought. Is one, that sounds really lame, and two, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can role play. I'd feel stupid. And I think that's the difference, is that you don't necessarily have to do the role play thing. I don't think anyone in our group tends to do it. There's a few that take it more seriously than others.
Yeah, so Ricardo kind of role plays it.
Yeah, mine is more about when someone is explaining something in their mind to you and you're trying to imagine what they're telling you. My way of playing is trying to find the opportunity to be funny in that scenario.
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways you can go about it also without, because some people will be like, if it's you talk to somebody, you'd be like, I walk up and aggressively shout, or you see people like act very theatric about it, or you can just talk normal like your character, or even say, my character wants to know what there is to do around here. Like, you don't even have to ask an actual question, just kind of give the basic idea of what you're trying to say or ask.
I think what he said is absolutely right. I think there's this nerve and apprehension that you're going to be asked to do something and act in front of a group of people, whereas actually it doesn't really come down to that.
Well, and I think that's part of the reason that Jolly doesn't want to play.
Yeah, and it might be that you say to two people, well, have a conversation. And you're having a conversation in terms of being your character. It's not you talking to this other person, it's your character talking to that character. So you might do things that you wouldn't normally do. But at the same time, it's still not really acting. It's not, it's not necessarily even role playing to a point. It's just having a bit of a giggle and seeing what ends up more than anything else.
It's weird because I think for me, I'm quite competitive as well, and it doesn't sound like a competitive game at all. But for me, doing this on the outside, it might be competitive. I don't know. I'm guessing I'm going to find out. But viewing on the outside and having never played it, I would get very into it, and I think that's where the nervousness sort of stems from, because then I'd be really thinking about, okay, what would my character actually say in this moment?
Well, you know what? I think
like
the flip side of that is that we record every Monday, and between one Monday to the next Monday, I'm sure all of us are thinking, what are we going to do in that scenario? We've left it we've literally last week or the week before we played, our whole session of about 4 hours was us in a meeting, essentially, just talking for 4 hours pretty much, and all of us, we left it sort of on a not a cliffhanger, but on a point of, we've been sitting here for 4 hours doing this, and all of us, I'm sure, will have thought about how we're going to resolve it the week after.
Yeah. And the thing I told Ricardo, because the whole, it's kind of like a character arc kind of based around his character right now because it's his home world or whatever. But the thing I did tell him after that was just don't try and rush it for the sake of getting it finished because you think everybody else needs it to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you know, then you might completely miss out on something cool that could happen.
Yeah.
And I can find entertainment to keep myself occupied, as we well know.
So that's actually a topic I can kind of bring up with it, that whenever I DM stuff, I always do it, on recordings. We're making videos and stuff out of it. And as a result, I want to try and at least keep it sub entertaining. So I try and keep stuff, for the most part, at least flowing in one way or another. And I feel like we miss out on certain elements of things like that. Because I'll hear people talk about stories where like, yeah, we had to break into the fortress or whatever. So we spent like 4.5 hours just deciding how to do it.
Yeah.
Or like we were imprisoned for like 3.5 hours. Like, I wouldn't even know how to start going about that, especially with our group, because it'd be like, you guys are in prison, and Kyle, like, I shoot everyone.
It sounds
I
like
think
people could easily make it complicated when it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, but I think
there's times where making it complicated can make it more fun because it's more rewarding when all of a sudden like you have this ridiculous plan that finally comes together after so much work, or you have all this amazing stuff that's working perfectly, then you mess up on a dice roll and trip and fall down.
Well, I think that's the really interesting thing, because I see myself as a bit of in a work capacity and in a life capacity as a bit of a problem solver. If I see something that's an issue, I try and fix it.
Yeah.
And with the role playing stuff, it's usually around coming up with a solution to a problem.
Usually he's the problem.
And that's the thing, is in my head, the first thing that pops into my head is, this is how I think we'll deal with this. But how I think we're going to deal with it and how 5 other people sitting around a table or sitting on a stream all think we're going to deal with it is completely different. So I might say, I'm going to do this, which is try and sneak past some people. But then Kyle might say, I'm going to shoot them. Yeah. And then the scenario is that I'm standing right beside them and Kyle is shooting them. And it's that sort of stuff is that it's not really competitive. I guess the competitive nature maybe in a really minuscule way comes into it from the DM to the players.
Yeah, it 100% depends on the players and the person playing, because you can easily find somebody that, if you're like, hey, we want a really competitive game, we want it to be challenging, we want to try and, rush through it and get all this stuff done. There's totally, sure, why not? Or you can be like, hey, we want to have a kind of a chilled, lay back, enjoy ourselves, talk, chill with your buddies and play, D&D. You can do that too.
Absolutely.
So this might sound a bit naive. I'm guessing you can't win D&D then? Like,
it depends. So, there's entire supplementary books, or I guess they're not supplementary, those are the core rule books and stuff, but there's adventure modules that are made that are just full books of adventure, and you can win those. You can complete those.
Okay.
And it's it's an open world in a sense, depending on however the DM wishes to make. Like mine, I mentioned the Dromarian Tales. Dromarin is a continent I created. And I've got all these different cities and towns and stuff. And if there's kind of like an overarching main plot that kind of starts coming through in like, I think the 3rd maybe episode or 4th. And if they went through that, for the most part, they could technically, yes, win. Is there more to do? Sure. Could they win? Yes. But it depends on how the DM
I guess that
goes
principle
about it.
is Skyrim again. You've got a main storyline.
Yeah.
But you've also got lots of side quests. And you don't have to do any of them. You don't have to do, or you might want to do all of them.
Yeah. And sometimes people make like a one shot, which is like, I'll make a session. It'll take about 4 hours, 5 hours, and people just sit down, play it all the way through. Either all die or they all succeed, and that the game's over. You win.
So if this is a question to both of you, if you were to say to your friends, I am going to be playing some Dungeons and Dragons, what would they say to you, Oyst?
I think they would be like, we don't know what. I think some of them would be, we don't know what Dungeons and Dragons is. One of my mates would definitely know what it is, and he'd be actually really up for it, and he'd actually ask if he could join along. But some of my friends would definitely not know what it is. And then if I told them what it was, there would be some weird looks chucked about at me, probably.
I'm exactly the same. If I'd say I asked some of my close friends whether they wanted to do it or not. But if I offered that out to the wider circle, I'm sure there'd be like 1 or 2 people that would say, let's do it. But yeah, I think the vast majority of them would rip the piss out of me. If I went back to my parents' house and said, when my brother was there and my old man was there, and I said, oh, I've been playing D&D on a Monday night. They'd say, what's D&D? And I say, well, I sit in front of the computer talking to 5 other people, rolling dice about how I'm killing aliens. I reckon I'd be thrown out.
Again. Yeah, if I went to my mass wealth of friends, I'd be like, hey, Jesse, I'm playing D&D. And he's like, yeah, I know, I'm in your session. Now, with actually most of my friends, if I went and told them, I'd be like, oh, cool, I made this character. Is it cool if I join?
Yeah. Well, I think also over here, there's certainly a stigma attached to it. That
I'm sure there is here too. But like I said, I was lucky enough to where the place I went to university, so many people knew about it or played it, or it was in the mainstream. Or if they didn't, they just didn't really know enough of what it was. So they didn't, be like, oh, I don't really know what it is. And that was it.
There's this stigma attached to it that it's probably only computer game nerds with beards and glasses who play it, and I'm trying to break that stigma.
Wow. I was going to say, in my city, it seems like the only thing that still kind of shares that thought is something like Star Trek. And not the new Star Trek movies. People are able to love those, but like the classic Star Trek.
Yeah.
University definitely is the place to try and D&D, because I know that my university definitely does those types of activities. I think American universities and English universities, what you find is probably there is a difference when it comes to that. I'm guessing it's more Harry Potter-esque kind of style to it, I would imagine.
Do you guys fly around on brooms and stuff, or what?
I know that my sister's uni, that was a thing where I think they were trying to play Quidditch or something.
My university's got a Quidditch team
with brooms. Is
my university competes with other universities at Quidditch.
That's amazing. That must be so funny to watch.
Way too many of my friends were part of the Quidditch team.
There must be so many people running about with just one hand holding the broom between their legs, and then the other hand. How does that even work?
So, quick question: if you were to play D&D, right?
Yeah.
And enjoy it,
okay.
and then someone suggested LARPing to you, would you go and do it?
What?
I knew what was coming from Oyst.
You know what? It depends. If there's a big group of my friends that are like, "Hey, we're going to do it," I'd try it.
LARPing is live action role play. Have you ever seen the film? Role Models?
Yes, I have. I love that film so much.
That's LARPing when they're all running around
with all the foam swords and
that's LARPing.
That is LARPing.
That's
yeah,
amazing. I would definitely do that. If I wouldn't do it by myself, I'd have to have a group of mates to do it.
Well, yeah,
with,
you'd look ridiculous if you
be
played it by
very
yourself.
passionate.
You just look homeless.
That would
You know
be.
what? I don't
Plus,
think
if
I'd
you
be
did
able
that
to do
in the UK, I was just saying, if you did that in the UK, people wouldn't care because like loads of people would just be thinking like you're on like a stag do or something like that.
Well, you know what? The thing that would worry me is it'd end up like the Holy Grail scene with the Black Knight. It's only a flesh wound. That's what worries me most about it, is that sitting in the comfort of my own home pretending to be someone I'm not is fine. Doing it in public is something that I just couldn't do, and it means going outside, which, let's be honest.
What? No, oh no, I'd have everybody come in my room. We'd all LARP in here.
That's a different type of role playing.
Is it? No. It's still live action, except for when I bring in my anime pillows.
So I guess now is a good time.
I don't have anime pillows. What?
I guess now is a good time to talk about. We did a live stream because last week we couldn't play Stars Without Number because Jesse wasn't there. No, that's not true. Ricardo wasn't free last time. So we made characters for our next D&D adventure, which
yes.
I think was a mistake because now everyone's really excited for D&D. And
as I look at all the 4 or 5 spreadsheets I have open on my computer right now.
But what that ended up as is a conversation between Jordan, myself, and Kyle, who so I was saying that I've always wanted to DM. Actually, we spoke about it before this, but I've always wanted to DM something,
and I encourage it fully.
Have never really had the chance to do it, and would want to do it. Kyle has also been working on his own scenario of a D&D adventure. So we started talking about Jordan and his current TFG D&D session.
Yeah.
Which is called?
The Dromarian Tales.
And Dromeria being... Dromeria?
Dromarian, or Dromarin is what the actual continent is called.
That's wrong. It should be Drumeria. Drumerin is
There's actually 3 different pronunciation depending on where you are in the world.
okay. Of course, there is. It's a continent that Jordan made, and I was saying, well, I was making
Scott,
my
the
own.
most fun part about it is linguistics.
I was saying I was making my own adventure, and it was in a place called Taran. Right? Stop laughing at us, Oyst. And our conversation was around, wouldn't it be cool if these two things entwined? Don't you think, Oyst?
Yes. Sorry. I find
Wow,
it so
I'm glad that
funny.
he wholeheartedly agreed with how cool that sounds.
I love the difference between Jordan's consonant. I can't even pronounce the name of it. Was Demera?
Close enough.
Was okay, and then
Dremerin.
Scott's one, Taran. That I did that just I find that so funny.
Technically, I believe it's called Taran, but
Oh, okay.
Where the settlers live.
So, wait. So is Taran a continent as well for your?
Taran.
Yeah. So,
Sorry.
So what we were thinking is that and without giving too much away, Jordan's whole concept was that the sea was used as a portal to allow evil to seep into the world, essentially. So I was listening to this and thought and read some of the history that Jordan had come up with. He come up with this whole sort of history around like 50,000 years ago. This happened.
We don't need to hear about this
years,
part.
like 20,000 years ago, etc., etc. And I was reading it and thought, well, I could use some of this stuff.
I put too much milk in this stuff.
So I was writing something, and I came back and I said to Jordan, I've come up with this great idea. When the sea opened and this portal, and all these evil seeped in, they also went to my continent of Taran, and this is what happened. And then I spoke to him a little bit more and said, so I'm thinking that Taran should be sort of to the west of Dramimeron, with the Dead Sea in the middle. He went, oh, the Dead Sea's in the center of the continent. It's landlocked. I'm like, what? I'm like, what? I've come up with this whole idea. What are you talking about?
So then I had to explain to him how it's kind of like the Black Sea, which is in the middle of the continent, not in the ocean.
So I put in loads of work. I mean, at least 20 minutes, and it's all down the drain. But this is the thing: is that there's this whole thing now going through my head. Is sort of how can I make this story? How can I make it come alive? And it sounds so stupid, but it's one of those things now that's occupying my head.
Yep.
And I'm sure that's the same
to the
for
point
Jordan.
where I was putting way too much time into stars. But now I get to put it into D again, which is a lot more fun for me.
Yeah, and I think so. To highlight the differences, I guess, between D&D and stars is that D&D is popular, and that I suggested that we do something different, which was a sci-fi scenario. So Jordan went away and came up with this huge world or universe or whatever.
Yeah, it's more than one world. Unfortunately, it's 33 of them
to run this sort of stories out of. But I think the idea of a sci-fi setting is great, but actually the fantasy setting is far more suited to this in my eyes.
Yeah, and a sci-fi setting probably could work, but not one that's so many interplanetary. So to kind of give it more perspective for you, always. Stars is kind of described as a sandbox pen and paper, which is, and rather than maybe following like you go to this quest and that can lead you to this quest and that can bring you to this quest, it's like, where do you guys want to go today? And there's like 40 planets to choose from.
What? That's so many.
Yeah, so it gets to the point where you're like, you gotta go to this planet. You're like, okay, there's like some crap you need to wipe up off the carpet for the king or something, and that'll help, and you'll get 100 money. You kind of start running out of ideas because you have to have stuff for everything. Rather than
how long did it take for you to make these stories?
Don't want the answer.
I do. How long?
I really do as well.
Oh, I mean, you kind of know how much I was working on originally for the stars thing, just for the.
That's not a number, Jordan. Come on.
The Gaia cluster. I know. What do you think that was?
I don't know. I'm not watching you for your webcam.
I would say there's probably more time put into that than most of our friends put into Rust. I'll go that far.
I don't have any friends that play Rust.
Oh, it's a shame. You're missing out.
Okay, so the plan now, I guess, for our whole D&D thing is that
it's a lot of hours.
we've decided that between myself, Jordan, and Kyle, and anyone else in the group who wants to DM something, can sort of use this world that we're now creating. So I get the feeling that D&D is going to be a bit of a mainstay on the SMG channel, certainly for the foreseeable future. So much so that between Jordan, myself, and Kyle, we've decided to record some round the table type discussions around how we come up with ideas, how people would run their own campaign. Because we've got Jordan who's done DMing, we've got Kyle who has played a huge amount of D&D and watches a massive amount of D&D. Myself who's a noob. And we just thought that'd be nice to have those three different viewpoints into one conversation.
And it really is. It's strange. It's one of those things that, especially when you are DMing, you kind of have this linear thought process in your mind, and you can never do that because you can't trust your players to follow it. Like if I'm like, cool, I'm sure, but there's a house on fire there. I'm sure they'll go there and they'll check it out, and there'll be this body there. Maybe there'll be a key in their pocket, and they can use that to get in the house, and then they can go in there and save a puppy, and it'll be the prince's, and then the prince will thank him and give him all these rewards, and they'll be like, "There's a house on fire," and they're like, "Yeah, I don't want to go there."
What happens is I say, right, I go and wee on it.
Yeah.
And you say, and I say, then did I put it out? You say no, and I say, okay, I'll walk off.
Yeah, and then
I tried.
And then Ricardo gets mad at you. Then Kyle's like, "Jordan, I'm gonna go and kick down the door." But
I shoot the house.
Yeah, the puppy dies. And then Jesse calls his parents, and Kala watches.
So yeah, I think that's one announcement that coming soon will be sort of some new videos on SMG, which will just be a round table sort of discussion around different topics each week. So
are we also going to do a series with us creating the world?
I don't know. I think maybe
cool.
dotted into some of those videos. We should do that, certainly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because I think there's one thing talking about it. So I guess these are sort of not tutorials, but I guess learnings that we have from it. But then also, absolutely, I think there could be like a campaign diary type thing, which is, so I was creating the world of Tehran, and I started with the races that exist. Stop laughing, Oyst. I started with the races that live there, and then the cities, what do they look like, and terrain, and so on and so forth.
Oyst, just to clarify for you, races is like humans, elves, dwarves. It's not white people live here and.
No, I get that. Yeah,
I figured, but then thinking
like,
Oyst is giggling. I hope he didn't misconstrue what Scott said.
No. I thought when you said human, elves, dwarves, I thought you meant they're only limited to those three, and I was like, what? Nah.
No, I think what is the list, like 39?
It's 39.
Well, I say 39. There's like 39 official, but technically, as they wrote in like the little sub thing, there's nothing to prevent you from being anything. Just make sure the DM makes it where they're fair. Like you could be like, I want to be a battle cucumber. And I'll be like, on it. And we'll have to come up with some way that a cucumber can be a race. And sure, we can do it.
A battle cucumber.
Yeah. It's...
Oh,
I grabbed the cucumber. Right, no.
I put on my glove.
Time for 50 Shades Greener. No.
A tragic cucumbering.
Oh dear.
That'll be that campaign's name.
So yeah, I think that was probably one of the major things. Was just I guess there's a number of people who might be listening to this who have never heard of D&D, like Oyst. There's a number of people who have heard about it and want to play it. Probably me in this scenario, and there's people who have played it or DM'd it or and know how much fun it can be. And that's the thing. I don't know how many people. I'm sure there must be people out there who sit down at their first session of D&D and just go, you know what, this isn't for me.
Yeah, and it's a shame because there's a lot of times that can easily just be, maybe the DM did something wrong.
Yeah. Or there's, and one of the big problems with this, and I'm probably quite culpable for this, is that there's always someone who doesn't take it seriously enough. There's always someone who takes it too seriously.
Yeah.
And then there's others sort of on the peripheral of that, and I'm certainly in one side of that camp, and there's other people in the other side of the camp, and we're quite lucky, I think, because we've been hanging out for quite a while, that everybody knows each other's personality, whereas I think this can bring out certain traits that people don't tend to see.
Well, and also the fact that we all do kind of know each other, so we know if there's an issue going on in the group, we can be like, hey, you need to stop being, which, I mean, we haven't really had anything like that. The worst we probably had was Rich, and he got imprisoned in episode 2.
Rich has played it.
Yeah.
Rich loved it. Rich was probably one of the most in character people.
That's why he's in prison.
Yeah. Rich got really, really, really into character.
Almost too into character.
To describe it, basically, Oyst, his character is kind of like the human embodiment of like the idea of the id, the want, the desire, the need, and how to act on that. So he wants something, he'd say it.
And he really said it.
And she didn't understand because she's a cyborg type person.
Wow.
It was quite awkward. I didn't really know where to look.
It was good though. They both played it out great. Carlos' character is easily one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's throwing those scenarios into just a normal group of people who are pretending to be characters.
Well, and that's the
that
thing,
are in
though.
their
If we didn't know
minds.
each other as well as we all do, that would have been a really, really awkward thing. But because they both know each other well,
But because Carla and Rich have been through that scenario before, no, that didn't happen. That didn't happen.
No. They both know each other's significant others.
And because they've been in that scenario, that hasn't happened either.
Sweet four-way.
Well, I'm feeling like I'm missed out now. I really want a character. I really want to make a character now. Everyone's talking about their characters.
Well, we could easily do that, Oyst. Maybe not right now, but
You know what, Oyst? What worries me is that I play a character called Jed McJedi.
no, his name is Jedi McJedi. He goes by
Okay,
Jed.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, and he comes from the planet Jedipiter.
In the solar system of Sithos.
Anyway, forget all that stuff. I made that character, and he's a con man. He likes to mess with people's heads. So in the first episode, I wiped my bloody hands all over Jesse's character, Austin Buttersworth, because he was wearing like a posher suit than mine. So I made it as dirty as possible. I started ripping it for various plans that didn't really work, just to mess with him a little bit. And that's been an ongoing theme through the rest of it. So we started making characters for the new D&D session. And I thought I'll do something different. I'll come up with something different. So I decided to make a cleric, which generally in D&D is a
holy healer.
A holy healer, absolutely. Mine is an ex-con man who has seen the light, and is now gradually becoming a holy healer.
By following the god of destruction.
No, the god of
No,
tricks.
the god of disease. What? No, he's disease, ships.
No.
Yes.
No.
Oh, we're not
Trick's
speaking
the god.
historically. We're speaking according to D&D. Gotcha.
So yeah, that was kind of what went through my head, is that I started out with this idea, and then I realized that I have way too much fun playing Jed McJedi. I need some of that in my life. But I think that's the thing. What was really cool about it, and this is what I love about this, is that I started by not having any idea how to make a character, not having any idea what the classes were, the races were, or anything along those lines. And as the evening progressed, in my head, I came up with a backstory.
Yep.
And that now means that when it comes to actually playing, I've got this character that I can try and be. I can try and be trying to be fighting the horrible thoughts, and let me steal this from this person and do this to this person to get my own way. I can try and be fighting those in the actual playing of the game. And that's what adds those extra layers to it that makes it really quite entertaining.
You're a half elf, aren't you? Scott?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that being said, the reason I chose that one was because I thought that would give me the best stats. It's not just about the backstory. The backstory kind of came as I rolled the stats and realized I could do this, and this. It wasn't that I set out with this idea in my head and I'll try and focus on that. It's just that's kind of where it naturally evolved to, because you roll some dice to see what stats you get.
I love reading about lore. Like, I love knowing the backstories and stuff like that. especially like
Well,
Game of
I've got a document of Jordan's that you can read. Starts 50,000 years ago.
Like if you could base a character off of just someone knowing all of the lore, just retelling all of the tales as you were like going through your quests, that would be quite funny. I thought.
We can, because
But-
one of the stats is history.
Yeah, well, as I was saying, if somebody like kind of had a basic idea of the world or played it, you could do something like your character is a wizard who spent his whole life reading up on the lore and the history of this world and different towns and learning about maps, and he understands how things work and knows people and knows places. You could easily make a character like that knows the lore.
Or he knows all that stuff but has never actually been out in the real world.
Or he just
And
makes it up as he goes.
Yeah, that's what I like about that scenario, is that could be someone who he knows everything. You know, we've all met that person who knows everything, is always right about everything, apart from
It's me.
never actually experienced it themselves. So they're going off what someone else has told.
It's 100% me.
And that's the thing, is that you're absolutely right. Sort of this story comes out of, and what then happens is that Jordan takes all that information and starts feeding it into story. So, I mean, mine's quite obvious, because I used to do bad things. Now I do good things. Inevitably, something from the past is going to appear.
Yep.
Because I've done things I shouldn't have done. I would
No,
imagine.
I would like Scott
I'd-
to make a lot more in-depth stuff, like if he was part of any groups or gangs, or if he had anybody he knew, anybody he was close to, any personal issues, what caused him to see the light, like any of that stuff that he could give me information.
I got hit by a car.
He physically saw the light.
Sorry, a horse and car.
Yeah.
No, and I think that's the best thing about it, is that then the story is tailored in a way that it brings those characters to evolve.
Correct.
And that's what's good about it, is that you start with this with no idea of what's happening, no idea of what you're doing. It's all a bit awkward, and then the characters start to come to life by you thinking about what they would be doing rather than what you would be doing. You know, that's the thing, is that when we play it, and because of who Jedi is, in my head, I'm thinking we should do this. This is the obvious solution. But I wait a good 25 minutes until I've gone through all the ridiculous things to offer up the solution that I think is the right solution. You know, because that's what I think Jed McJedi would be doing, because he'd be teasing people and seeing how people react while he prods them with a stick.
And you really do have just creative freedom with what you, because I mean, Scott's character is basically built to be the perfect thief, and he's a holy man. Like, there's nothing that prevents, even if he wanted, Scott could go and get like the heaviest possible armor and giant effing weapons that he wants if he wanted to go and use that to fight. Now, it's going to slow him down a little bit, the armor, because he doesn't have the strength to carry it, so he'll be slowed down, but he can still do it. You can do whatever you want. It's just kind of a good starting point and what perks and stuff you get.
And I guess the plus point about this against Stars Without Number is that there's sort of magic items, there is lore, there's progression that Stars doesn't necessarily have, and I think that's where the excitement comes.
Is there like a level system as well? You're
Yeah.
like level 1. Oh, there is. Okay. Because I didn't know you actually had stats in the game as well.
Yep. Actually, after this, I'll send you a character sheet.
Ooh, excited.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's the thing, is that I think until you sit in a conversation with people who are genuinely infused by it, and and you've got no idea of it, you just think that sounds stupid, that sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
No, but I think when you start listening to people who genuinely like playing it.
Well, here, Scott, say somebody mentioned it to you like 5 years ago. What would you have said?
You know what? It's something that I've always known about. That's the thing. And I've always thought, you know what, because I am a massive nerd, I thought that sounds fun. You know, it sounds like I'd enjoy doing it, because, I get bored if I sit in front of a board game for too long, because you're tied to the limits of that board. You're tied to the limits of that game, and, and so on and so forth. Whereas if I had this in front of me, it's what's in your head, and I've got a reasonably vivid imagination, so it works quite well. Whereas other people can't do that. They'd much rather have this strict set of rules that they have to adhere to. And I think there's different people out there, and that's why. But I've always had this desire to play it. I've never had a group of friends who have been willing to play it.
I was talking about a nerdy story. I mean, obviously we were 8 at the time, so I guess it's not really as nerdy as kids being kids, but we had a game that isn't as sexually charged as it sounds, called the Under the Couch game. What it actually was we heard some of the older kids in our neighborhood talking about D&D. And we weren't really sure what it was. We were talking about like they had the grid, the map where the characters were moving, models and stuff.
Yeah.
And all these other things, and they were talking about inner fighting and dwarves and elves and humans. So what we did was we took this big piece of wood and put a graph paper on it, and it made like an idea of what the map was like they described, which actually looking at it now, we were pretty accurate. And we made up different classes like human, elf, dwarf, and it'd be like we didn't get the class systems. We're like humans were fighters, or no, humans were magic, dwarfs were fighters, and elves were long range bow users. And my neighbor Andy went out and got little Lord of the Rings type toys and figures, and we used those like miniatures. And we kind of just made up what we heard about, which looking back on it kind of was D&D. We were just using a 6-sided dice only, but it was, it's one of those things that you can kind of do at any time without realizing it. Because it's at the end of the day, it's pretending with the dice.
I think if you said that sentence to anyone, absolutely. I think if you said that sentence to anyone, it's pretending with a dice, they'd be like, what are you talking about?
For me, like growing up, as you were saying, like when you were 8 years old, you like thought, you thought about all these different things and you're writing these down. Like listening to you say that is really weird, because I remember being 8 and I remember being a massive fan of Lord of the Rings. Like I loved it. And
well, yeah, you and I have definitely had our conversations about Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, but then like I never ever did any of that stuff that you said, even though I was totally aware of. I was totally exposed to the same things, I guess, that Dungeons and Dragons is based off of. But yeah, I never ever had that inclination to go, right, I'm gonna start making. Even though I even knew what I was aware of Dungeons and Dragons at that age as well. But I never ever did any of those things. I just find that's just a really interesting comparison to make.
You know what's even weirder? When I was 8, I was playing football a lot. That was all I did.
I played a lot of sports when I was young too, but
that was all I did every day. Finish school, go down the park. And it's still something I knew about, but it was just never in my eye line to think about playing it, because no one else played it, and then if I'd have said to the football teams I used to play for in the dressing room, I'm going home and playing some D&D, they'd have thrown me out of the dressing room whilst I was getting changed. But that's the stigma that's attached to it, and I just love the fact that as a group of people we can do it, and the fact that it's becoming more mainstream. You could quite easily watch people play D&D every single day on Switch.
Yeah, there is one thing I've seen a lot of people actually. Scott even kind of brought up the issue that he had at one point, which is, I want to play D&D, but none of my friends want to play. And people are always like, I see it a lot. I see people in comment sections leave that a lot, and there's things for that. There's entire Reddits for that. There's the site Roll20. You can get on there and you can look for a session to play with people.
Yeah, but I think playing it with people is clearly more fun. But I think Oyst came into this conversation. You can find some pretty
good friends that way.
Oyst came into this conversation thinking, I don't really know about this, but now I think he's sold on the idea that he'd like to try it.
Definitely.
And that's the thing, is that I think if you can get people into a room listening to people who have played it, I think you've got a huge chance of convincing them to try it, unless it really is against their personality type.
Yeah, I mean, because I guess the Tolkien's lore is probably the best way to describe it with Oyst. Just be like, we're throwing you into Tolkien literature. There's orcs, there's elves, there's goblins, I guess technically there could be Uruk-hai, sure, why not? You can throw whatever you want in there. The hobbits are called halflings for legal reasons, but all that stuff exists.
I could definitely see a lot of people my age wanting to be a part of it if they were in the right crowd. Imagine there are some guys out there that your typical lads that obviously they're not like that at all. But then there are quite a few people like me that would happily with a group of friends, if they're comfortable with, would give it a go.
Yeah, I think it's most of the people that generally seem to be against it are either a lot older, and that's even older than Scott, which is saying a lot.
Jesus.
Or
not
like
as old as Jesus, but
no, yeah. Although he might not be into it either, the whole multi-religion thing.
Maybe that's what happened. Maybe just, you rolled a natural one.
That teen era, like preteen era of like that when you go through that change of, oh, I'm too, like I remember the I'm too old to watch cartoons now stage, where there were a lot of shows and stuff I liked. Is like, oh, I can't watch these anymore. I'm too old. And now I go back and watch them.
I think it's really weird because I think more than that, I think it's a personality type. You know, I think it's about interests, obviously. But I've got a friend who comes around and we play Imperial Assault, which is a Star Wars based game. It's as close as you can get to D&D on a board game, pretty much. You know, there's a story in a book or missions in a book. So it'll be you land on Hoth. You've got to disable the power generators in 7 rounds whilst, you know, troops are being deployed and so on and so forth. So, you know, after each end of the round, there's something else that might happen on the map. So some troops might land, they might bring in reinforcements. If you open a door, the next part of the story happens. So it's as close as you can get to D&D in an actual board game. But when I suggested to him, let's play D&D, he was like, oh, I don't think I could do that. You know, I don't think I can do it. I'm like, well, you're almost doing it here. You know, because you're telling a story by reading a book. The difference is that is a scripted thing where the only context is, do I shoot this person or do I walk this way? You know, that's the decision. Whereas this is, do I shoot this person? Do I walk that way? Do I jump and do a 360? Do I shout as loud as I can and try and get other people's attention? Do I try and talk to the person to stop them from attacking us? You know, and that's the difference, is that you have to think for yourself, what are the options? What's the best option? What's the option I'm going to take?
Yeah. And I think in Stars, that's probably the biggest issue with you guys' party is a lack of communication. Every single time there's the same thing of Jed saying, I've got this. Then he goes and usually passes it to Austin to where he ends up getting in trouble. And then Kyle runs in and shoots them.
It's worked
all
right
every
for us.
Confrontation happens.
It's worked all right for us. I guess a recap would be good about what to expect on the channel. You know, what we've got coming up.
So I mean, every Sunday there's going to be some footage, I guess, for charity live stream we did back in December for Special Effect. We did a 24-hour live stream, and you'll be seeing stuff from that going up a lot on Sunday, whatever time Scott's got that set for.
About 6:30, I think, on a UK time.
Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We didn't the week we just had because we didn't play it, but I'll have the VODs of Stars Without Number go up. We again play those on Mondays, 7:00 p.m. GMT, 1:00 p.m. my time, which is Central.
And you can watch that on Twitch or YouTube.
Yep, those also go to iTunes.
Oyst.
What?
Live Oyst. It's live.
Woo!
VODs go up, and then it also goes up on iTunes. What's the one called? Stitch, Nintendo Switch,
yeah.
Stitcher,
yeah.
the Google Plays. The same with this podcast. You can find it on all those sites, all those sources. But yeah, then the other things will be going up again Monday, Wednesday, Fridays will be the VODs. We'll be making those videos soon between Scott, Kyle, and myself of, I guess, just our thoughts on the DMing stuff and answering questions for Scott.
I think in my head, I see it as sort of a tutorial stroke discussion around sort of guide to new players or to people who want to DM their first.
Yeah, and there's 400,000 of those out there. It's fine because it's one of those things where it's not, this is how to do it. It's, this is how we do it. Feel free to use it.
Yeah, I think it just adds some context to what we're doing. And also, you know, if anyone is looking for how do I do this? How would I start this? I think that's the angle we're going for is, you know, I said to Jordan, I want to DM something. And Jordan said, this is what I did and sent me some notes. And I'm like, well, how do I begin? How do I start getting ideas that I've got in my head down on paper? How do I then turn those into a story? How do I then get people playing? How do I then run those sessions, and how do I keep myself organized whilst doing it? Yeah,
I guess my way of kind of doing everything is kind of unique in that no one really shown me. I didn't really look up tutorials. I grabbed the books, read them, and then I just kind of, after, you know, watching other people's sessions, like I've seen other people play it, obviously, I just kind of wrote.
Yeah.
And I've always enjoyed writing, so it wasn't like it was a hassle. I probably would have wrote it for fun anyway.
And so yeah, those videos will be sort of, we don't really know about schedule. We don't know really what they look like at this moment in time, but that's the plan for us to all be working on our own adventures to then, we've called it the multiverse Oyst.
Yeah. Regardless of the fact it's in one universe.
We've called it the SMG D&D multiverse.
Yeah, but it works though, because now if one of our things breaks that and kind of like one of our one shots or something, we'll be like, oh no, it's in one of the other universes. It's a multiverse.
But also what this means is that Jesse was talking about wanting to host one,
Yeah.
which means actually what could happen is he doesn't necessarily need to do any of the work, because we could say, well, look, here's the history of Tehran.
Yeah.
And he could say, well, I could set my stuff around this city here, and our adventure and his adventure might never sort of swap places. But at the same time, what I love about it is that at some point, characters from one of the sessions that we've played might come into contact with characters that we're currently playing.
Yeah. And it works actually kind of like that for Kyle, who, he wanted somewhere that for a starting place, at least he wanted an area that's cold and kind of snowy and mountainous. Well, in Matt and Tyler's backstories in my series and the Dramarian Tales, they came from a completely different continent that Matt actually made up called Skandava, which is, kind of parodying Scandinavia. But it's the idea of kind of like Norway and the big Arctic areas and big mountains and cold and snowy. Kind of like, perfect. I'll use that. You tell me about some of it and I'll kind of central around that.
So basically what we're telling you, Oyst, is we're the new Marvel.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
So expect 7 billion videos.
Do I need to make my own universe or a world or
No.
a continent to contribute in any way, or is it just?
No,
Well, I think the question could be, would you want to? Because if somebody in our group wants to, I'm not going to tell them not to. But if you want to just make a character or something like that, that's fine, dude. Just play along. You don't even have to make anything if you don't want.
I'm definitely making a character.
Yeah, I think what I would suggest is with these things is playing it and see how it goes, and then if you have that bug, which we've all got at this moment in time,
very, very unfortunate, because it's quite the bug.
Yeah, and then seeing what else you want to put in. You might decide that actually just playing it is enough. You might think, actually, you know what? I want to tell my own stories.
Oyster, we haven't played any other games in 3 months.
That's the creative side of it. Is you could end up writing for hours, and you be the only person who ever sees that stuff.
It's true.
Yeah.
How many
But
did I
that
say I
doesn't
had?
mean-
34 spreadsheets whenever we
Yeah.
last talked about it.
That's a bit over the top. But that doesn't mean it's
100% is.
that doesn't mean it's a waste of time, because it's the other thing I would say is it's sort of exercising a bit of the brain that never really gets exercised.
Like I said, I like doing stuff like that anyway. It's always extremely therapeutic for me. So for me, it's just a positive all the way around, because I'm like, oh, this would be a cool area. This could happen here, and this, and this. Will they ever see it? I don't know. I don't care. If they go there, cool. If not, it exists. It's part of the world that's flowing and kind of helps give life to something that they, even if they don't see that, they know it's there.
And if not, maybe the next adventure does.
Yeah, that's 100% true. In fact, I think that's kind of what I'm going to be doing with the one shot. Is I'm going to be kind of utilizing one of those weird, small broken towns.
I'm pretty sure that one shot is not a one shot.
I'm pretty sure you're 100% correct. But I'm going to disguise it as a one shot, and if people want to do more, we'll.
So I guess to wrap this up, apologies if you were looking for the normal podcast and D&D isn't your thing. Next week, we'll be back. We'll be back
watching this far, if that's the case.
We'll be back to the bog standard podcast with Jesse probably floating around doing his Jesse stuff, talking about bums. That tends to be what he does. And then going forward from there, expect to see lots of D&D stuff on SMG. I'm sure, there'll be a lot of stuff in the pipeline. It might not come out next week. It might not come out the week after, but there will be more and more D&D stuff until we've all had enough of D&D. I'm sure of it. Hopefully it's something that you guys enjoy. If not, then, there will be other stuff going out on the SMG channel, but also on all of our channels. Oyst is making his first video in how long, Oyst?
3 months. 3 months. It should be going up soon.
Nice.
Well, taking 5 hours to upload it.
And I think in popular fashion, we should probably end this with an Ask an SMGer.
Oh my God.
Yeah, where
Okay.
I just decided to open up Google Images and type in stupid Yahoo answers to find a question for us that you guys are more than welcome to ask it in the audience if you have anything you want to ask us. But this is somebody asking, is rainbow trout a good name for a baby girl?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, is this still D&D related?
Unfortunately not, but I thought
Okay.
it fit, so that's why I picked
Okay.
this one.
I'd say yes, as long as people only call her Rainbow.
What happens if they just call her Trout?
Well, I guess it depends what she looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be
Could
quite
go either
apt.
way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably going to do something. If you're a young female and everybody calls you a trout for most of your growing years, it's probably going to have some kind of impact.
Yeah. Well, luckily for us, somebody actually did answer this question for them with, I think sockeye salmon is a lot nicer. And then also
No.
suggested Alaskan cod or simply prawn for your spawn.
You know what? When I was growing up, my brother's 5 years older than me, so I got a lot of his like hand-me-downs.
Okay.
And someone made or bought my brother this like green corduroy suit. This is when he was like 10. It was horrendous. And he was made to wear it for quite a while, and then it got handed down to me. Right. And bearing in mind, I hadn't really taken the mickey out of him for wearing this suit because he was bigger than me and he used to beat me up. So I didn't take the mickey out of him. As soon as I had to wear that suit, he started calling me the green blob. And I still remember that to this day. He was so harsh. Right. And I'm like, this is a suit that I'm like, you used to wear this. He's like, yeah, but you didn't take the mickey out of me. I'm like, oh, if I'd have known it was open season on rubbish. So from that point forward, I think this is where the Mickey taking comes from. So now I realized I missed an opportunity, and now I make up for it at every single opportunity. But since then, I've started only wearing green suits because I miss the attention.
There you go.
Oh,
And yes, I would call my child Rainbow Trout if I had the chance.
There you go. You, Oyst, what do you think? Rainbow Trout a good name? Yes or no? Baby girl. No? You wouldn't name your daughter baby or Rainbow Trout?
No, I definitely wouldn't.
What if you
What
were
was-
to
what were
marry
the
a
other names that were
hippie
suggested?
that was also a mermaid?
Yep, still wouldn't name my child Rainbow Trout.
If we're allowed to say what we would name them in the animal kingdom, I would name my son Komodo Dragon.
That is a good name. That's a strong
Indeed.
name.
And because his
Oh.
breath would be terrible.
Ah. And if he bites people, they die.
Yeah.
Would
There goes something
would you
like
name your
Leopard Gecko.
child after any characters from like the fantasy fiction genre? Because I would definitely name my child Khal Drogo. Like that is a cool name to have.
Except everybody's going to call him cow because they won't understand it. And they'll start
That's true.
mooing at him and he won't get
I would
it.
definitely consider naming a son Jed McJedi.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Logan's
Just
quite
get
a
in
nice
bed.
name.
Logan, did you say?
Yeah, Logan. I quite like the name Logan.
Yeah, that's a real name. That's not a fantasy name.
No, but that's like
Wolverine would be going with the fantasy joke.
Maybe Deadpool.
Legolas. Anyone fancy Legolas?
Not really, especially not after the
Not
Hobbit
really,
films.
Yeah.
I like them.
I'm not sure about the fantasy setting. I think certainly, in this day and age,
I don't know.
of
Theoden would be a pretty sweet name for a kid.
and Apple and all the rest of those names that get bandied about. I'm not sure Rainbow Trout is that far removed from what actually happens.
Yeah.
Whereas,
No, I think this is somebody legitimately asking.
yeah, whereas naming someone Legolas is just everyone's going to go, you're named after that thing from Lord of the Rings.
There was another one I actually saw in here
wrong?
question-wise. I know we usually only do the one question, but it was just somebody saying, do you think humans will ever walk on the sun? And it's somebody that's just kind of talking about all this different things of how they thought it'd be cool.
Well, you know what? Actually, today, sorry to interrupt. Today, I was reading about scientists have discovered an atmosphere on GJ 13210 or whatever the planet was, and that there probably isn't life there because it's like 320 degrees. But the highest recorded temperature that sort of animals have been able to exist on our planet is about 120 or something, or maybe 200 or something along those lines, sort of the hottest it can get to where life can survive. And then I thought, well, why wouldn't there be life there? Because maybe it's, maybe that's what life is like on that planet. Why do we think they need oxygen to breathe? Why do we need a certain temperature to survive?
Well, see, that's kind of what it was, but now actually reading the rest of the question, it's better. So do you think humans ever walk on the sun? They also put it in there. I was just thinking and thought how crazy it was. A person walked on the moon and Mars. It was just wondering if you think a person will ever be able to walk on the sun too. I know it's really hot, but I'm thinking you could go in the winter when the sun's like 30 degrees. I bet they could do it.
No, that can't be
And
real.
then somebody, of course, followed up with, well, if they do it, it would have to be at night. And
Do you think this person watched Total Recall and thought it was real? Do you think that's what's happened? They also think that some ladies have 3 boobs.
some ladies have 3 nipples.
That's true, yeah. Yeah.
I just thought that'd be a funny little thing to kind of end it on because it kind of has to do with stars without number.
I mean, yeah. Yeah,
Sun,
some of the Dr. Fix-It probably thought you could walk on the moon,
you can walk on the moon.
on the sun. That's not true. No one's walked on the moon.
Oh, okay.
Well, I guess that's it.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me, everyone. This has been the Saturday Morning Coffee, Saturday Morning Gamers podcast. Gets a little confusing with so much S&M going on. Thank you for joining me, Scott from ScottDogGaming.
My pleasure.
Oyst from Oystobix.
No worries. I've definitely enjoyed
Welcome
this.
back, Oyst, by the way.
Yeah, welcome back.
I'm a little bit blown away from the changes and the D&D talk. It's
That's
pretty
all good.
cool.
It's great having you back, though, Oyst. And again,
Oh,
this
thanks.
podcast can be found on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Store. And I'm Jordan, the host for this session, but Jesse will hopefully be taking back over because I don't really feel like editing these on the regular. And until next time, everybody. Later.
Bye.
Bye.